Welcome to video 3 in creating a residential asset for City Skylines. In videos 1 and 2 we found a house using Google Maps, and we used that house as our reference for designing out this house. In the second video in the series we went through, after we created the shell of the house, and created some dimensions to all the doors and windows, created the planters, that front patio there, and this driveway here. And in this video, we're going to go over applying materials to the surfaces of our objects and get all of these faces painted. Now this is going to be the easiest paint job that you've ever had to do in your life, because we can just use the fill bucket tool to fill in all of our faces here. So let's get started. Now by default, SketchUp comes with many materials that you can choose from. So we're going to be using some of the built-in materials, but we're also going to create some of our own. So we'll start with roofing and see if we can find a roof that matches the home that we're using as our reference point. And it looks like we have a brown shingled roof here, which they happen to have in SketchUp by default. So we can just paint the roof using our fill bucket and paint that surface. Now, with most things in cities, size tends to be exaggerated just a little bit, and these shingles are going to turn out a little bit small, and when you zoom out, you can see that pattern is repeating pretty drastically. So we want to enlarge that image just a little bit, just so we don't see so much of that repeating texture. And as this is the view that you normally spend while you're playing City Skylines, this is not going to work out for us. So let's increase this texture size. And we can do that by using this drop down here and scrolling up to In Model. And that just shows the materials that you're using in the model. And there's our roofing material. You click the Edit tab here, and then down here is the size of the image. If we increase that, that'll increase the size of the image. So let's see if we increase this to 1, what that looks like. It's a little bit better. Let's try 1.5. That's a little too big. So let's go down to maybe 1.15. Yeah, that looks nice right there. When you zoom out, you still see some of the repeating texture, but it isn't nearly as drastic as it was before. But that all looks good, and I'm going to actually create a roof cap here, just to break up this line so that there's not just a line running down the middle with the shingles going off either side. So let's build out that roof cap now. We'll grab our line tool, and we'll start over here, and we'll make it about that big there. Come down, make sure we snap to that red axis there, and click. And now, because we already drew that there, we're going to snap to a line that's directly across on the other side of the roof. So we can do this, look right underneath there, toss that there, then we'll do the same on this side here. Grab here, we already drew that line, so we're snapping to it. There, here to there. Now we've created a little bit of a roof cap. We'll use the push-pull tool to expand that out. We'll bring it up by 0.05 on either side. And we'll do the same right up here. 0.05, and we pulled that 0.05. Now we end up with this little valley here, but that can be filled in really easily with our pencil tool, just by drawing a line straight across, that filled in there, and we'll do the same right up here. See that filled in all of those gaps there. That there. Do that there. Now we can actually get rid of all of these lines right in here, just so as we're filling textures, we don't have to fill in the small spaces. Now we'll take our texture, back to select. If the texture isn't selected in here, you can use the eyedropper tool and select a surface that already has that texture, and then it'll switch over to the paint bucket and fill that in. So that creates a nice little roof cap that we have right along the top of the house there. That'll work out really well. I want to make it a little bit darker though, so we can just go back in to edit, make that darker, but it's going to make our main roof darker as well. We'll take care of that in a moment. I just want to give it a little bit of color variation so we can definitely see that cap. So that made the roof darker, so we're just going to go back to roofing, grab our original material, and paint those in. And then we need to resize it as well. Come back up to in model. It's right there. What size do we make this? 1.15, so we'll do the same here. Edit that to be 1.15. Now all of our shingles are the same, but our roof cap is just a little bit darker than the rest of the roof, and that'll look really nice in game. Just makes it look like a different texture up there. So now for all the trim, looks like this house just has white trim. I'm not going to match that pink color or this cream color. I'm not a huge fan of those colors, so we'll just create our custom color for that. But all the trim that's going around everything and along the roof line here, that's all white. So we will go in, do the drop down, select a color, and scroll down and grab a white. And fill all these in just to make sure that they're all set. No, I'm going to do just a little darker than white. Go a little gray with that. Alright, that looks good. I'm not going to worry about the window frames just yet. I want to get a color painted onto this roof, or onto the main portion of the house. And we're going to add a texture as well. So if we look in here, just trying to find a siding, there's nothing here that I really want to use. So we'll go ahead and create our own texture for this. We can create a material by clicking the Create Material button. And we want to grab a file. So I downloaded a stucco texture. So when you're doing a Google image search for whatever texture you want to include the words either tileable or seamless in your search. So you just go out to Google Images. In this case, we went out and found the stucco, but you want to make sure it's a stucco texture and that it's either tileable or seamless. And that means it can just be repeated without any lines in the image, so they won't look like squares as you're repeating them out. So you can really find any texture. If you wanted a wood texture, you'd type wood tileable or wood seamless in Google Images, and you'll get a lot of images that are free to use that are seamless or tileable that you can apply to your object. So in this case, we're going to create that stucco texture, and I'm just going to leave it that default color. I kind of like that color, so click OK. And it automatically drops in our model, and we will paint these surfaces. In this case, the texture is a little small again. Just making sure that I got everything. Texture is a little small, so we'll increase the size a little bit. Remember, you want to make it a little bit on the large size. It just looks a little better in the game, so we'll try a 0.5. That looks pretty good. Let's see what 0.75 looks like. I like that a lot better. Yeah, that looks nice. So that looks good. And then we'll continue painting the rest of our surfaces white. So we'll go back to our select tool, use our eyedropper. I know I already painted that surface, so we have that gray color there. Now go through and paint all surfaces the color that you want. Now I should note here that we're painting everything a little off-white. I don't like to keep anything just stark white because it doesn't look great in the game. And depending on what mods you have installed on the game for adjusting colors or atmosphere, that white turns out just a little bit too bright, so I like to make it a little off-color. Since we're doing white, sometimes it's difficult to determine where you've painted and where you haven't. But if you're using a different trim color, it becomes a little more apparent that you haven't missed any spaces. Now, it's not imperative that you paint the underside of any object because you're never going to see that in the game. But I like to just make sure that all surfaces are covered. Okay, I think that covers it. We won't know until we get into Photoshop, but anything that I've missed wouldn't be too difficult to fix. And we can fix it either using Photoshop, or we can just come back into this model and fix it. The next thing I want to do is get rid of this white that's down here, just because we are going to be placing some plants in here, but we just want to make sure that that's a nice dark color just to look like soil. So we'll go in here, see if there's any soil object, which I don't believe they have any. So we're just going to grab a darker brown color and toss that in there. You're probably never going to see any of this once the plants get in. And again, you're going to be zoomed out pretty far away, so you won't be able to notice the difference. So the next step is to paint our concrete. And we can do that by using the drop down, going to asphalt and concrete. And I really like this polished concrete old texture. And we don't have to do anything with the size. It turns out really nice looking in the game. So this one we do want to make sure we get all of the edges because they will be visible in the game. So we just want to pop in some of those there. And that looks good. Got all the edges there. The one thing I just thought of is I want to put a little patio out here. So we'll draw a rectangle. We'll say the patio comes off this way. First we'll build a little slab for this door here. Alright, now when we did that, it applied a new texture. It tried to fill in this face here, or it applied a new face, try to fill that in. So we can just click on that and delete it. And you'll see that it created that line there. It just extended those textures out, so we'll delete that as well. Now we'll give it a little bit of height. Doesn't need much, but you'll see that the faces are reversed. So we'll go ahead and right-click these and reverse faces. The edges are reversed as well, so we want to reverse each one of those so that we get a nice texture once we get into the game. Alright, that looks all good right there. So now our next step is to create these windows. Again, I don't like anything turning out white in the actual texture, and when we bring this into Photoshop, I want to make sure that I can select all of these windows so we can add transparency and illumination to it. When it turns nightfall, we want those windows to illuminate. So the easiest way to do that, I've found, is either going into colors and selecting just a really bright color that doesn't appear anywhere else on your in your scene or on your object. But what I tend to do is create a new material, and in Photoshop I create a window texture just so I can see the word window, and it's right side up. I know which is the top of the window and what's the bottom of the window. So we can do that here and just fill that in. And I know each of these are windows now. So when we open up that texture in Photoshop, we can just select all the blue items, and we know that those are the windows. Now we could do the same for the doors. We've created a door texture. Here we can open that up and fill in our doors, or we can actually apply the texture within here. Now it doesn't always work. Sometimes when you paint the door on, you end up with multiple doors in there. We can go in and edit that texture, but it doesn't look like it's going to work right here. It really depends on where this face lines up on the rest of your image. So it doesn't look like that's going to help us out. So we're just going to go back to the door texture and fill it in. I missed a window texture there, so we'll do eyedropper, click the window, and click in here. Oh. Somehow I missed that. Click in there, and then do the same here, eyedropper, select the door, and paint that in there. So now we know which are our doors, which are our windows for when we open this up in Photoshop, and we can see which way is up just by what way the word is facing there. And we'll do the same with our garage door. We'll create a material, open up the file we made, and create the garage door. Now we have our garage door labeled there. So the last thing that we want to do before we save this document and get it imported into 3ds Max is we actually want to delete the underside of our building here. This underside is a large face, and even though we didn't paint it, it does have that white texture applied to it. The white texture is something that is going to take up space on our UVW map when we unwrap the textures off of here, and we are limited on space for that file just on the size of the file. It's limited to 1024 by 1024 for most objects, and this large area here is going to take up a good chunk of the overall image size that we have, and because it takes up so much space, these textures are going to be reduced in quality because they'll have to be shrunk down to accommodate space for this. So we just want to go ahead and delete the bottom of our building so we don't have to worry about that. So you can just select it and click delete, and now the bottom of our building is deleted. And you can do that for all those white areas down there. The inside textures will just maintain. We could delete these because it's not going to impact anything up here, but they are smaller, so it doesn't matter, and you might inadvertently delete something that you don't want to delete. So that looks good right there. I believe we have all of our surfaces painted. We're ready to save this. And the reason why we need to use SketchUp Make 2017 is you're able to then save in SketchUp version 8 file. In order to import this into most any program, it needs to be SketchUp version 8. If you use the free SketchUp that's available on the SketchUp Web, or the SketchUp free version that's now, you can only save in SketchUp 2018, 2017, and I believe 2016 versions. But we need to save as a SketchUp 8 file. So to save this file, we just go to File, Save As, and find our folder where we're going to save this. We'll save this as House. and we want to do SketchUp version 8. So you click that version, click Save, and now we're ready to go. So in the next video, we're going to go over importing this into 3ds Max and unwrapping the textures here, positioning our object so that it imports into the game correctly, and then we'll be off to Photoshop, the last step of this. We'll see you in the next video.